shot my first deer in 1980, and I've gotten a deer. Then I didn't get another one till I believe 85,
Okay.
and I have not gotten a deer since.
That's an incredible record.
Every year I have, I get my patch. Jump in the back of that pickup truck. And me and Gary got in the front, and he literally drove out into the field. And as soon as he topped the rise, I swear there's 80, 90 deer. He chased them off the property, and then he turned back around, came in, and then he had my son. He said, "Now you tell me how long before you see him come back in." And he said, me and him were talking. Within 2 minutes, he's like, "Well, there's one, and there's more," and they just kept coming in.
Right.
It took me 6 days after legal time to have that shanty out before I finally popped it free, going out there after work every day chipping. So I called her and said, "I just broke it free." She goes, "Is it off the ice?" I said, "No, it will be in 10 minutes. I'm taking a breather, then I'm going to push it off the ice." When I pushed it off the ice, the DNR officer was standing there waiting for me. But that dog taught me how to hunt. Because I didn't know anything. I'm a kid from the inner city. I went out there and I started just following her around, and I watched what she did, and I literally learned from that dog more than she learned from me, because it's not about shooting the biggest and best buck. It's about harvesting the meat, doing it ethically, and utilizing it, having some respect for what you're doing, and having a purpose for it. Sure. Yeah. Our cottage growing up was in White Lake Township.
Oh, nice.
You know where Alpine Valley is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right across the street, Alpine Valley. That's how I got, I got out of Detroit in the summers, was to go to that cottage.
That's awesome. That's incredible. Yeah. Can you tell me more about that? Like, is that like a family cottage or like?
Yeah. My dad bought it. My dad and mom put everything they had into it, get us and my brothers, my sister out of the city in the summers.
Okay.
And Labor Day, we'd go home in Labor Day. We'd come back up there on Memorial Weekend every year.
That's
and
awesome.
My dad would drive up on weekends. But there was a small lake across the street, Brendel Lake, and it was only about half developed at the time. There was almost never any boats or anything in the 1960s, 1970s. We had a canoe. There was a river that connected 3 other lakes. So we'd take the Huron River up to Fox Lake. We'd take it down to Cedar Island Lake. And we just spent our summers chasing frogs, turtles, fish, and running in the woods, and created a love for the outdoors, because you get back to Detroit and where'd the trees go?
Yeah, absolutely. How big was it over there? How many acres did you guys have?
Oh, we didn't. We were in a subdivision.
Oh, okay. But
wow. M59 was a 2-lane highway back then.
I see. Okay.
I mean, kids walked across 59 to go to the party store there, and then nobody worried any about it. I remember the first time I went in the winter, and I was about 8 years old. My dad got a call that there was a leak. So me and my brother went with him, and we're city kids. We walked up to the corner and made snowballs to throw at cars, and we got bored waiting for a car to come by and just went and did something else. This is M59 with no cars coming.
That blows my mind. That would never happen today, Wow.
No. It's non-recognizable from what it used to be.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah.
Where Indian Springs is.
Mm-hmm.
That we used to call it Jerry's private hunting preserve. When it was part of Pontiac Recreation Area, there was no roads, nothing there. I hunted there for years without seeing another soul.
Wow.
Until the Metro Park system bought it, and I'm out there setting up a deer blind, and a park officer came by and said, "Hey, you're one of the guys that have these blinds up here?" I said, "Well, I'm the guy that has all of these blinds up here." He said, "Okay, my job is to find you and tell you that this is no longer state land. It's Metro Park land. We're going to open Indian Springs, and you can't hunt there anymore." I was like, "Really?"
Wow.
So, we lost half of what I used to hunt.
Wow. That's wow. So how long did you get to hunt there between that period of time when you went there and they stopped you from hunting there?
Okay, I'll be honest. I hunted that season,
Sure,
even though I wasn't supposed to, because I'm like, really? Because there was nothing going on. But his idea was to warn us. Sure. It's like, listen, we're going to be building a golf course here and stuff like that. So I finished out the season and found other places to hunt.
Okay, nice. I definitely understand what you're talking about, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with Great Lakes Crossing and things like that. They used to be all fields and stuff, and just to see that mall out there is it's crazy to see how that comes. But yeah, absolutely.
My buddy used to take me out hunting in Novi.
Okay.
For pheasant. And now I don't think you can fire a gun in there.
Yeah. It's changed quite a bit. Yeah, for sure.
That's why I moved north.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't mind me asking, whereabouts are you now?
I live just outside of Traverse City.
Okay, nice.
I wanted my kids to have a very different upbringing than I got at 6 Mile and Gratiot in Detroit.
For
So
sure.
that's where I grew up.
Okay. And then like how do you like the hunting over there in Traverse City compared to how it was, down south?
Awesome. I love the bird hunt. I have a German short hair pointer. Since I was 18 years old, I've never been out without a pointer.
Okay.
And we came up here, and the biggest problem we have here is it's too easy to get a limit of woodcock. And the dogs don't know when you're limited out, so they keep pointing them and want to know why you're not shooting them while you're looking for grouse.
Wow.
So no, the bird hunting here is fantastic. Deer hunting, well, deer hunting is pretty good. You got to work a little harder at it. I mean, not as hard as downstate. There's less antlers, more meat.
Okay.
Let's put it that way. But I've been really lucky. I've made friends over the last 20 years living up here with 3 different farmers that allow me to hunt their land, that get me crop damage permits. So that's where you saw me on the website with we were filling permits.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell a little bit more about that? Maybe some of the people that follow don't know what that is.
Crop damage, the farmers, you'd be surprised how much damage a deer can do to a farm. And the first time, my son and I went to a local farmer that was selling seed because I was going to plant a rye field. And I got to talking with him, and he ends up being about my age, and we were getting along. My son was getting bored, and the guy said, "Yeah, he said I'm having a real big problem with deer this year because getting 80, 100 deer every night coming to this field." My son looked at him and said, 80 to 100, and he literally looked and said, "Are you calling me a liar, son?" He goes, and my kid's 10 at the time, like, "No." He goes, "Jump in the back of that pickup truck." And me and Gary got in the front, and he literally drove out into the field. And as soon as he topped the rise, I swear there's 80, 90 deer. He chased them off the property, and then he turned back around, came in, and then he had my son. He said, "Now you tell me how long before you see him come back in." And he said, me and him were talking. Within 2 minutes, he's like, "Well, there's one, and there's more," and they just kept coming in, and they're just ripping up his crops. And I asked him about that, and he said, "Well, it's been a pain trying to get them in the years past. There was I guess the person that used to be in charge of the program didn't follow the rules exactly." So I said, "Well, I know the DNR biologist up here because I'm one of those guys that goes in and makes sure I know all the rules. I'm a stickler for the rules, right?"
Sure.
So I helped him get the permits. So he handed them all to me. He handed me 20 permits and said, "Can you fill all these?" Sure. And I started, I'd give them to my dad. I'd give one to my brothers. We would fill our freezers. I actually mailed one to a nephew who lives in Florida. Processed it, put it in a freezer cooler, and sent it down there. Just
wow.
But I lost him in a divorce. His divorce. I ended up with his wife was friends with my wife, and he was friends with me, and somehow he's kind of out of the picture. But in the meantime, I had a couple other farmers up here that heard about me, and they like somebody who can go out there and actually will do the job.
Sure.
So now I've got a guy that he's a friend of mine, and he gives me all of his tags, but it kind of works out because now I've got permission to hunt his farm during regular season.
That's awesome.
The biggest problem while block tag hunting, because the farmers, they lose a lot of crop. And I've watched these deer come out and just start ripping corn shoots out of the ground, and it's so quick. So he was so happy with the way I shoot the deer. I don't give him any tags back. I make sure I shoot him. I think of it as a job, and it's my job to do it. But he also knows that I process the deer. I use every piece of meat I can. So he's given me permission to shoot the bucks that are driving me crazy during the summers, during the crop damage, because my son was out there the other day. He kept texting me going, "Dad, I got 17 bucks have come in front of me and I haven't seen a doe. It's driving me crazy."
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, we're looking forward to October because this is the first year I got permission to hunt regular season.
That's awesome.
And that's kind of how you get the land to hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. I got a couple follow-up questions on that if you don't mind. Like,
sure.
I'm not too sure. I'm not too familiar with it myself, but is there any kind of regulation on bow or gun during?
No, you can shoot whatever you want.
Okay.
It's got to be a legal weapon. that you during regular season. You have to follow all the regular season rules as far as you've got to have orange on. It's got to be daylight. You've got to, it's everything's the same, but it's doe only, and it's of course when nobody else can shoot. It's not like hunting. It's not as much fun. Number one, it's hot. Two, you get a deer, you need to process it immediately.
Sure.
I mean, I get it in the barn, I strip it, I quarter it, and get it. I have a empty refrigerator in the basement. Took everything out of it, all the shelves, so I can put the meat in there and let it age for a couple days before I process it. So it's work, but we do a lot of long range shooting. Just because if you miss, come back tomorrow, you get one, or wait 10 minutes and get another one. So what we do is we practice our shooting skills. And last week I shot one at 220 yards after a 100-yard stalk, but my son got one at 350. And that's the longest shot he's ever taken.
Wow.
So he was pretty excited about that.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I saw on some of your pictures that you guys were all processing the deer together and things like that. I thought that was really cool. And you said that you use every part of the animal as well?
As much as we can. I mean, we save the tongues. My son makes an awesome dish. He gets a lot of his ideas from Stephen Rinella.
Okay.
We are Stephen Rinella disciples. We love the show. We love his mentality, because it's not about shooting the biggest and best buck. It's about harvesting the meat, doing it ethically, and utilizing it, having some respect for what you're doing and having a purpose for it.
Sure.
So we save the ribs and we cook them over an open fire at my cabin. My son does the deer tongue with chimichurri, for an appetizer. We have a bag of them, and he cooks a big appetizer for Thanksgiving for our family. Even the hocks, turned out that we used to grind the hocks all the time, and now we don't. The shanks. Mm-hmm. We put them in a slow cooker. Found out if you slow cooker the shanks, all that sinew and stuff that makes it, most people don't want to eat it. It dissolves. Yeah. And then you've got actually the most tender piece of meat coming out of that slow cooker. It's amazing. You just pick up the bone and shake it, and the meat drops off, and it's awesome.
Wow.
So, I recommend everybody buy a meat eater cookbook, because those recipes they're from practical experience, and he puts them in there after he's utilized them, and he puts good recipes in there.
That was gonna be my next question, is how'd you find all these recipes and stuff? But it's
they're everywhere. I've got cookbooks like crazy. I've got meat eater cookbooks. I've even got some old ones from some of the old outdoor writers. Okay. And we love my son likes to cook. I like to cook. My wife likes, and we experiment. We try different things. I've got a grinder here, a lem grinder. I've got a smoker on the deck.
That's awesome.
Looking to we make some lunch meat out of the neck. Now it's a pastrami. Okay. And I need a meat slicer for that. I'm going to start doing lunch meat because it just all turns out well. And we have so much venison. That's awesome. We have to keep finding recipes. Actually, it's funny. It's kind of a joke around here, but it's a true one. For Mother's Day, my wife, that's all she asked for is Mother's Day is store-bought meat and morel mushrooms.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. I mean, with you guys shooting, the deer during the summertime and things like that, do you have much room in the freezer come actual hunting season?
We usually see hunting season, we're a little more picky, and I usually shoot. I want to shoot one because I've got an unbroken string of patches, those Michigan deer hunting patches. Okay. Shot my first deer in 1980, and I've gotten a deer. Then I didn't get another one till I believe 85. Okay. And I have not gotten a deer since.
That's an incredible record.
Every year I have, I get my patch.
Wow.
And, but yeah, I actually, between my brothers, my son, who is 6'5", played football in college, he eats a lot of meat. Okay. And then I've got 2 small chest freezers here, and then a big stand-up.
Nice. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And then we make a lot of sausage for Christmas that we give away. Last year we made 50 pounds. Wow. On Christmas Eve before the family get together.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's incredible. That's good to have that stockpile, especially with the prices of food and stuff going up at the store and things like that. So
when I was growing up, my dad went hunting once in a while, like twice a year, pheasant hunting, usually open day and maybe one other time. And that's how I got my interest in hunting. As a little kid, I can still close my eyes and picture he'd come home after dark. He'd have his boots in his hand and he'd have a pheasant tail sticking out of them boots because he'd tuck the birds into them. He'd walk in the basement and I can still close my eyes and smell him, smell the smell of him processing those pheasant, getting them ready.
Wow.
I never got a chance to hunt pheasant with him because he had a falling out with the guy he hunted with and he just stopped hunting. But it got my interest. And me and my brother, we'd skip school and drive up to the cottage and we'd go hunting the state land. I went for years, just not a clue what we were doing. Every once in a while we'd get a rabbit.
Okay.
I was 12. My brother took me on his in-laws farm and I got a pheasant. It was the first thing I ever shot. It's still hanging on my wall too. They got it mounted for me, but everything we did, we just learned by trial and error.
That's awesome. So when do you feel like it started to click for you? Like, as far as like, okay, like this is how it's supposed to be. Like, I got it now.
When I bought my first German short hair pointer, I had a guy that knew I was looking for a dog. He called me and said, the owner that I sold it to died. If you want to drive up here, who's in Grayling, said, if you want to drive up here, all his wife wants is the vet bills paid back. So I got a started German short hair for $175. Wow. It was 19, and it was still some money back in 1978. But that dog taught me how to hunt. Because I didn't know anything. I'm a kid from the inner city. I went out there and I started just following her around and I watched what she did. And I literally learned from that dog more than she learned from me.
That's incredible.
And, I took it forward to where now people love to come up and hunt behind me because grouse and woodcock are what I love to do. And you get into these coverts up here, they're full of them.
Wow.
Yeah, anyone watching, don't ever come to Grand Traverse County hunting. It's awful.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question too. Is like I like whenever I hunt Michigan, I'm hunting like mid-Michigan, like around the Saginaw area and things like that. And I've been hunting there since I was, I went with my dad when I was 6. And just from that time till now, I've just seen such a big increase of people just keep moving up north and more of that. Are you starting to see that where you're at too?
Oh yeah, actually our intention is to move farther north. I've been putting Detroit in my rearview mirror my whole life, and I was very lucky to marry a woman who agrees with me. She loves to fish. She doesn't hunt anymore, but she goes out with a camera nowadays. But she loves to fish. She loves the outdoors. We kayak, but everywhere we go, we're seeing more and more people. So she's thinking maybe the UP next.
Okay, nice.
We like the Curtis area.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Absolutely. Yeah, that's cool. And should be plenty of space for you guys up there too, huh?
Yeah. Even that, when I was a kid, we'd go to the UP and there was nothing there. I remember we used to go to Whitefish Point and there was never a car in the parking lot or anything. We just walk around. Now you have to park half mile down just to walk up to it.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. I was stationed in Illinois for a while, and the public land out there is ridiculously hunted. And it's kind of funny because like I'd get out there early. I kind of get a sense of like when everybody gets out there. And so I was like, all right, cool. Most people come maybe 2 hours before dark. So I'd get out there 3 hours before dark and try and find my spot. And I'd be a good ways back in there. And I would say 85% of people are hunting within the first 10 acres of the road. Like, like everyone's scared to kind of come in a little bit. So I was like, all right, they're just going to push on me, hopefully. So
yeah, and that's what we do at my cabin. We have a cabin over in the east side of the state, 40 acres. It's the only private land in the section. It's 7 miles down 2 tracks to get to it. And so every year, me and my brother that own it with me, we trade back and forth who hunts the property.
Okay.
And everybody else hunts state land. But it's such a big area of state land. It's huge. It's the only designated wilderness area in the lower. Wow. And we go in there and we literally look to where everybody's camping, all the people that came up to hunt, and we look for the escape routes for the deer, and that's what we hunt. We don't, because they're going to be pushed and they're going to go back deep. So if you want those bucks, you go deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then we don't look for big bucks. We're not trophy hunters, though I did get the biggest buck on the Atlanta meat pole 2 years ago.
Oh, nice.
It was the first time I've ever hung a buck on a meat pole, in town, but it was so big. I was like, I gotta go. So we went and hung it, and I actually won.
That's awesome.
And, unfortunately, it cost me quite a bit because I only won $250, and it cost me $600 to get that one mount.
At least you have the down payment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's awesome.
Well,
I
what I
feel
did
like
is I took the 250 and told my wife it was only 350 to get it mounted.
there you go. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's kind of an underrated thing is like a deer pole in town. You
Hmm.
know, like I feel like a lot of people don't get the opportunity to go see that, you know.
Right.
And
Well,
I
it's fun, but I said I was done hunting. I actually it was funny because I shot 2 bucks that morning. I've never done that before. I just was lucky, and it was on our property. We have a planted field out there. We plant rye, and I happened to get it, and both of them. So I was done hunting. So at that point, I'm like, I might as well go into town. And when I saw what was hanging in town, I looked and went, I have a bigger buck than any of these. So I went back and got it. We're
that's
about a
awesome.
half hour from there.
Wow.
So yeah, it was kind of fun. It says the first time we never go to the open day buck polls because usually we're at camp and sleeping
Sure.
or tired. So we have our own traditions there,
Hmm.
including we always have heart sausage gravy, or so for instead of regular sausage gravy with biscuits, we do heart gravy with biscuits.
Oh wow, that's cool.
It is. My son does that, and he does the biscuits from scratch. It's a very remote cabin, no running water,
Okay.
propane lights, propane stove.
Hmm.
So it's a project to do that kind of cooking there. So
Sure.
whoever's in charge, has to put some work into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you
But
get a
that's
little bit more out of it too. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like that's
Oh
awesome.
yeah, as I said, it is like an upper, like a almost like a Western Upper Peninsula or back in time hunting camp because it is so remote.
Hmm.
But that's part of it. It's not about the harvest; it's about the hunt. Always has
Absolutely.
been for me. I just love being out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that definitely has a better vibe to it as far as like, than like, the wraparound porch that has all the lights and everything else.
Yeah,
And there's satellite TV that comes in and everything else. So yeah,
right.
that's
We
awesome.
belonged to a club when my son was young, club in Onaway, and I did like it. And it
Okay.
was a great place to have a kid because I could take him out there and get him interested in hunting. The youth hunt, you're pretty much going to guarantee your son's going to get a deer, and you get to sit next to him. I was sitting next to him when he got his first deer, sitting
That's
next to him
awesome.
when he got his first buck, sitting next to him when he got his first black powder. But after a while, you want something more. And this is a big old 2,800 square foot house with satellite TV and bunk rooms and double stoves and and a lot of drinking going on. And that just wasn't for us. So
Sure.
after my son was old enough and we weren't sitting in blinds together, it was like, okay, we both dropped out of the club and just started hunting our own.
Oh, that's nice.
But I even hunt here. I have 20 acres here. We had a horse ranch,
Okay.
and I have a planted field in the back there. So if nothing else, I can come home
It's always
get
nice
him
to
that.
have.
Yeah, my son got his first archery deer there.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
I love hunting, and I take a lot of time to find places and opportunities.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Do you have any suggestions to other people who are trying to be like in your situation as far as like finding opportunities for them?
Mainly it's talking to people. I talk to people. I knock on doors. I talk to farmers. I make friends. I offer to volunteer for stuff. But a lot of it, like with the horses, I met one guy just buying hay from him. And then
Mhm.
in the process of talking, he's like, "Oh, you want one of those block tags? Sure." And he put my name down as a shooter. So
That's awesome.
it's just being in the right place, right time, and I think it's just having your ears open for it. I've always been able to find places, but it
Okay.
takes a lot of work, and sometimes it takes a lot of driving,
Sure.
depending where you live.
Sure. Absolutely.
But to me, it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you about two hunting stories that I saw on your page as well. You talked about a huge, massive doe that you got, and then you said you had your brother next to him, and he had a 5 point, and that doe was pretty big,
Oh yeah,
a lot bigger than that other 5 point.
that was actually last year.
Okay.
And the doe I shot, I was at is up in Atlanta, and I was sitting in the blind, and she came out, and I thought at first that it was a doe with a couple fawns,
Hmm.
but then a couple other deer came out, and I'm like, okay, that doe had 5 fawns. It was just massive. It was just there were 5 adult doe, and that one looked like it was, it made the others look like fawns,
Sure.
and her head was just it's so long. So when I shot her, and took her back to camp and hung her on the pole. And then my brother showed up with a 5-point he had shot. And we hung the two of them together, and that 5-point looked like, and it was not that small of a deer. It was just the biggest doe I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I've shot a little bit over 100 deer during regular season. And then I don't count block tags. Okay. So, we keep track, and you count my patches. I've gotten I take every deer I have in and get patches for.
Okay.
And I lost track, but it's somewhere over 100.
That's incredible.
That's the biggest deer I've ever shot. It's crazy.
Wow.
And so we hung her up there. Yeah, just hanging her there, it's like it made it look even bigger. It's like I didn't realize how big it was till we hung it next to the other one. So
yeah, I was looking at the picture and I was like, wow, that's a big deer. Like, I'm surprised.
Well, you look at her ears, it's like it looks like a donkey.
It's wow. Yeah. And I know you keep talking about the patches and stuff too. And I know you said you have a relationship with the DNR. How important do you think that is?
It's huge. Everybody's so anti-DNR, and I don't get it. I go up there, I make friends with them. When I first moved up here, there was some questions I had on where to hunt, and I got to the point where they know my face, and then I started talking to them, bringing deer in for the patches, so they got to know me and my son, because every deer we got, we'd bring into them. And we'd talk to them, tell them the story, tell them, and they got to know me as someone who's very interested in making sure I follow the rules.
Sure.
Consequently, they like me, and they'll treat you with some respect if you treat them with some. But it helps out. I had a shanty on a lake, and I had to go downstate for work, and it had thawed, and it was like 3 days of and I was worried about it. Then it refroze, and it was completely buried in the ice. So there was no way to get it out, and I had to call the woman who knew me from coming up there over the years. And I called her and said, look, I got a problem here. I know I've only got a week or so to get that blind out. I don't know how to do it. And she said, just try, chip away, keep in contact with me, make sure that I know what's going on.
Right.
It took me 6 days after legal time to have that shanty out before I finally popped it free, going out there after work every day, chipping. So I called her and said, I just broke it free. She goes, is it off the ice? I said, no. I will be in 10 minutes. I'm taking a breather, then I'm going to push it off the ice. When I pushed it off the ice, the DNR officer was standing there waiting for me. And I pushed off. He goes, are you Dawn's guy? I said, yeah. He goes, okay, good. He goes, that other shanty out there, have you seen anyone trying to break it free? And I said, well, I'm only here a couple hours. He goes, have you seen anyone personally? I said, no. He said, good. He goes, here's the thing. I would have given you a ticket, and I would have given him a ticket after the 15th, but I knew you were trying. He doesn't look like he's trying, so I was waiting for you to get yours off. The moment it was, Dawn called me, I'm giving him a ticket. So if I hadn't had that relationship, I'd have gotten the ticket there. And my understanding, it's like a $500 fine. So
Wow.
It's a game. It's like solitaire. If you cheat doing solitaire, is it really worth playing? Same with hunting. I don't care what the rules are. Just tell me what they are and I'll follow. And then, when you get something, you feel better about it. And the DNR is just there to enforce the rules. It's not their job to determine which rules they think are right. Just follow the rules.
Sure.
So I think they like me up there because of that. That's my opinion, and they know it. So, but I do that. I've made friends with the local law enforcement everywhere I go. I talk to them. I understand their job.
And I think it's important to have more people like you out in the woods, because obviously they can't be everywhere at, any given time, so it's good to have, at least, the rules, exactly what you're doing and things like that. So then, if there is something, you can, tell somebody, hey, that's not the way to do it. And if there's a problem from there on out, you can at least, pass it up to them so they can handle it,
Right.
So yeah, that's good.
So you said there were two stories. The one about the big doe. What was the other one you saw?
Yeah. So the second one would be the pheasant hunt you went on with your son, and you said that it was just a lot different than how it was up north. And you went back looking on it, just saying that you had a really good time. If you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was because I hadn't been hunting down there for so many years. I've been up here since 2002, and he moved down there after college. And he's got a job working in Lansing. Okay. So he's been hunting the state land around there, and they had that the release thing going on in some of the areas in Michigan. And he took me to one, and it was so different because I'm so used to going out in the woods and seeing nobody up here. where I go hunting in the aspen thickets, you never see anyone, or very rarely.
Right.
And I went down there, there's cars parked all over. There's regular beaten paths through all these fields because people are just hunting, but it still was pretty cool. You knew the birds are there. And, maybe all of them, when they get released, the easy ones get shot, but there's always going to be one tucked in somewhere if you work hard enough.
Right.
And it was kind of cool because you're walking through and you're not seeing much. You're seeing people, but you could tell that there's not too many people, so it probably wasn't a release date.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still, when that rooster went up in front of me, it didn't matter. And nothing mattered. It was still pretty cool. His dog, his pup got the bird for me, and I hadn't shot in a pheasant on state land in probably 30 years. And
wow.
So having that go up was amazing.
Yeah,
and
that's awesome.
He inherited my father's double barrel, an old Savage Stevens, heavy. Nobody else would, but he wanted to take it out there and shoot a pheasant with it just for Grandpa. And he did that. He's very much into tradition, like I am.
That's awesome. That's incredible.
It was, to be out there with him with my dad's gun, and something that my dad started, which was pheasant hunting, which is what got us all started in the first place. So
yeah,
it all comes around. It's full circle. Having a son that loves to do what you do is a big bonus.
Sure.
I don't drag deer out for him anymore. He does it for me.
What would you say, like, how would you say that was the best way that you introduced him? Because, like, I'm sure that you didn't just force it on him or anything else like that. Like, what was the way that you did it to where he ended up loving it?
The first thing I did with both my kids, besides we had the cabin and, we take them out, we'd take them for walks and stuff. But the first thing I always was bluegill fishing. Bluegill fishing downstate, it's, every cast. So for a young kid, it's a good way to get them started in that kind of, lifestyle. Sure. But the bird hunting behind a good pointer was nice. But mainly it was, when he was too young to hunt, I'd still go to the camp opening day, take him out of school just to watch his, to hang out with his uncles and his grandfather. And if my dad got a deer, I remember one year when they were, I think, 5 and 7 years old, my two kids, they helped Grandpa drag a deer out. And then I'd take them back home. We wouldn't even stay the night, but it was just to introduce them to it.
Sure.
And then that club was awesome because you take a young boy out there and he doesn't get too bored. You're going to see a deer. Actually, his first deer, I had to wake him up and say, "Hey, Chase, there's one you can shoot." Because there was a couple small bucks came in that we don't shoot at the club and stuff. And finally got a nice adult doe that came in without any fawns. And I watched it for a while. And then I finally woke him up and said, "Hey, Chase." He's like, "What?" I said, "You want to shoot that one?" Really? His eyes got so big. And yeah. But yeah, and honestly, there's one trick to it that people, I think, overdo is you take a kid hunting when they're bored and they don't want to hunt anymore, take them home. Don't say, "Well, we're going to stay another hour." Let them get the endurance over time. Sure. But if you force a kid to stay out there, the kid's going to not want to go the next time. So that was always, as I said, just little bits and pieces until they started wanting to do it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think I'm hearing what you're saying. I don't have any kids personally, but like just thinking back on how my dad did it with me, he did the same thing. And just how much I like to hunt now, I don't know how he'd peel out of the woods and take me with him. I'd be like, "All right, yeah, we'll just, I know it's a half hour before dark, but we'll leave right now." So like,
I see a lot of guys do that too, as far as they don't want to take their kid because they have limited time hunting and it takes so much time. So they put aside one day they might take him. But I just figured once he gets into it, then it won't be a chore anymore.
Sure.
And with my son, it turned out really good because he loved it right off the bat.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it was weird because he didn't like the bird hunting that much. I had this great bird dog his whole life. She's 15 now, but most of his hunting life I've had her. He didn't do much hunting behind her. Once a year, he'd go out and get a limited woodcock or a grouse. And then when he got his own dog, all of a sudden he's gung-ho bird hunter. He's going out west pheasant hunting. He just loves it now. So where were you when you were 12 and I wanted someone to hunt?
Yeah, right.
He was always into deer and squirrel.
Okay.
Squirrel's another way to get a kid interested. Just give him a 22 and take him out in the woods, teach him how to call a squirrel.
Okay.
It's fun. And that'll also teach him about woodsmanship.
Sure.
That's how we find our deer hunting spots, is we have a squirrel camp at the cabin every year. It's just like deer camp, but we're hunting squirrels, 22s only. You're not allowed to use shotguns. So you make it hard, and we do it the first opening week, so all the leaves are on the trees. So, but what happens is everybody finds where they're going to hunt on that weekend.
Really?
For deer, because you start looking to see where the deer are moving, where while you're squirrel hunting, you can see everything, and then you just mark the spots and you go back and set your blind up.
I see. So on that piece of property, you don't have like designated stands or anything. It's constantly moving stands.
Well, our property is only 40 acres, so I have one stand, one blind, one planted field, and like I said, me and my brother, we will alternate years on which one. It used to be my dad only. And then after my dad passed, me and Charlie just took turns. Everyone else hunts state land, but there's thousands and thousands of acres of state land in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we use the squirrel camp to find, to pick out our spots.
I gotcha.
Okay. And also you find where all the deer, all the clear cutting, because they clear cut in the area all the time. Oh, okay. Every year there's another section that gets clear cut. And I know a lot of people complain about it. I don't. Clear cutting has a purpose. And after about 3 years, it's the best deer hunting in the state.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. We had one when we first bought the cabin, which was, I think, 26 years ago. The first winter, we went back, and this was to find it. The first time we were finding it, it's 0.8 of a mile, 0.6 of a mile, follow the edge of a swamp. It was hard to get in.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I were driving in, and she just said, if the cabin's standing, it's not underwater, let's buy it. This is what we've been looking for. The next spring we went out and they had clear cut a couple hundred acres of that drive.
Okay.
And we were devastated. We actually called it the devastation. To this day, it still is, even though it's so overgrown now, it's ridiculous. In 25 years, it all comes back. But I learned from that when you go shining at night, in the summertime, you take your lights out, go show the deer. There's always deer in those clear cuts. And so I started hunting the one spot where we could always guarantee, right at dark, we knew we'd see a deer there. So I started hunting there. And after a while, you realize those deer are all over. And when the jack pines get about 4 or 5 feet tall, the deer think they're hidden. If you go into a tree stand right on the edge of the clear cut, everybody thought I was crazy because I'm wide open, this big orange blob sitting in a tree on the edge of the clear, but the deer don't think they can't be seen. So then you're watching the antlers move through, and you pick the deer you want. And I used to get I didn't even hunt anywhere else. I just went up there and hunted for years until it got so overgrown that I had to go look for new spots.
Sure.
So I'm always looking for those clear cuts. I mark them, and you wait about 2-3 years and just move on in, and the deer will be there.
Wow. Is that just for regrowth for the clear cutting?
Well, in that area, it's Kirkland warblers and elk. So they are clear cutting for that purpose. The jack pines, the Kirkland warbler, will only breed. Kirkland, I don't know, do you know what a Kirkland warbler is?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it should be our state bird because this is the only place they breed. Okay. Michigan there's about 500 breeding pair. I think it's up from there now, but they're endangered species.
I didn't know that.
They winter in the Bahamas. They come up to Michigan, central Michigan, to breed. And then, the biggest areas, Mayo, Atlanta, that whole area.
Okay.
They will only lay eggs on the ground under a certain size jack pine.
Really?
So after the jack pines get too big, the DNR will cut them down, sell them for paper products and stuff, and then they replant.
Wow.
Or they burn. If you ever see these big fields that have burn marks all over them, yep. Jack pines only give up their seeds under fire. Sounds like a Greek myth, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, they cut them down, they replant, and then they let them go to the right height, and then they do it again. So it's also to, the adult mature forests are great for some of the owls and things.
Okay.
But they stop being producers of food for most of the forest critters. So you cut it down, all of a sudden the underbrush comes back and they have things to eat. And so a lot of that is to give the deer food, not take away shelter. So it's Michigan does a really good job of it. I mean, people will complain about it, but if they do a little research, they realize that Michigan's doing really well, and they're one of the few states that's operating in the black when it comes to their woods and waters.
Okay.
And the amount of state land they have because of it is because of the way they're managing it. We have more state land than almost any state out there.
It's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. Speaking about some of like the rules and regulations and the public land and things like that, I'm not sure throughout your years, were you ever a baiter?
Yes.
How did you feel about it once they took away or started the bait ban?
Again, it's go back to solitaire. You're playing a different game now. You got to know, here's a, you know, everybody ever says, well, here, I like playing this type of solitaire. Well, playing this, that's the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
You're self-regulating, just follow the rules. So if they tell you that, you know, this, we've changed this rule, well, then you play by that rule.
Sure.
I wasn't happy. I kind of like baiting. I don't put huge bait piles out. I think that is counterproductive. But when you're bow hunting, especially, I don't mind deer, you know, rifle stand. Like I said, I just shoot the deer going across the open field. So I'm okay with that. But rifle or bow, I'd rather give them some reason to stop, so that, you know, people won't take these iffy shots at deer that maybe are too far or are still moving, or, you know, it's like, well, I took the shot because it's the only shot I had. Well, sometimes you got to not shoot. But especially during archery season, I believe you have a lot less wounded deer with bait, because it stops them. And I'm not talking about a dump truck full of bait. I'm talking about 3 or 4 sugar beets or a bucket of corn.
Right.
In an area that the deer are coming in anyway, but it will stop them, give you a better shot.
Sure, absolutely.
But if you can't do it, you can't do it, and it's not worth the price. Those tickets are pretty hefty too, and you can lose your hunting license, which I never want to do.
And you see it all the time, you know, through the articles, people on the paper and things like that. If people are still baiting, and it's been quite a few years since that ban, and it's like, I think that's what paints most hunters in a bad light, is just because it takes one person just to spoil it for everybody, you know.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of us think it's a bad rule to ban baiting, but not everybody believes that because it's a bad rule, you don't have to follow it. It's the rule's the rule. You don't change it by breaking it. You change the law by attending meetings, which is what most of these people don't do. Go talk to the DNR, go to the meetings, let your voice get heard. And sometimes you'd be surprised how effective that is if enough people give voice.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's great.
And in the meantime, there's other things you can do. You can use scent, you can use attractants, you can do other things, or you can just spend more time in the woods learning where the deer are traveling and hunt the travel patterns.
And I think that's what it is. And I think it kind of forced you to become a little bit more versatile as a hunter. You know what I mean? Instead of just like, I'm just going to hunt this and like, that's it. And, you know, yeah, absolutely. Cause like you see, you know, out West, it's a completely different ball game, you know, and then, you know, maybe out East a little bit as well, but like, you know, you gotta kind of adapt and adjust. So,
Well, I've seen them hunt out West. Excuse me. I've seen them hunting out West. The type of hunting they do out there, I've been out there mule deer hunting, and it's amazing to me. I mean, what people doing that in Michigan, they're like, is that even legal? Driving around in a truck with a gun and glassing the slopes. And when you see a deer, you get out and set up your stand and shoot it. So not all hunting is that way, but it's what's legal out there. You know, in Wyoming, you can drive around with a loaded gun. So, you know, people look at that and say, or hunting deer with dogs. There are places where it's legal, places where it isn't. Bear with dogs. As long as it's legal, we should all support each other.
Sure.
And that's the thing. It's follow the rules, support each other in the sport, or we're going to lose it. And it's up to you to know what the rules are. Sure. There's a way. If it was eliminating your ability to get the deer, they wouldn't do it. There's enough deer in this state that you can find a way to shoot one. It just get out of your can, get out of the box, because that's what happened. A lot of people have their pop-ups. They pop up a blind in a field and put a ton of bait, and then they're hunting. But that's not hunting. That's harvesting. You might as well just get block tags and shoot them across the cornfields.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. I think one thing that I've been thinking about here lately, we kind of talked about it a little bit before, but like obviously food and stuff's getting a little bit more expensive. But with that, I personally think that we're going to see more people in the woods this year just because of that. What's one thing that you would suggest as far as like, you know, you see newer hunters out there that inevitably they're going to break the rules, or it's going to be, hey, you know, that's not very sportsmanlike or anything else like that. What's one thing that you would suggest to veteran hunters to kind of help them out?
Well, one, don't get mean with them. So many people, you can't do it. Just walk up and say, hey guys, are you new? You know, ask them, find out if they may not even know that they're breaking a law. So you can talk to them about it. You can give them some advice. I actually I'm not a real big, I'm not going to give away my secret type guy. It's, I'll help them. And that's what we should do, is help them. If it's a new hunter, help them. If it's an old guy who's breaking the rules on purpose, well, you can't help them. So just walk away, easy enough. Yeah. But the new guys, they just got to learn as you go. I spent so many years in the woods without getting anything because I didn't know what I was doing. Me and my brother were kids. And we, I was 14, my brother was 16. We'd jump in the car and go up, and every once in a while we'd get a rabbit. And that's about it. Duck hunted for years without shooting a duck. Pheasant hunted for years without shooting, except for that first one I got.
Yeah.
Deer hunted. Oh man, I didn't see it. I hunted, I think, 4 or 5 years without ever seeing a deer in the woods. And the first one I got, I couldn't believe it. I actually got a deer, and it was with archery too.
Oh wow.
It was a doe with a bow in 1980, and I couldn't believe it. Me and my buddy were camping up in the Everett area, and I shot this deer, and we hung it away from camp a little bit because if we wanted to leave, we didn't want to. We were, I'm from Detroit. I was afraid I was going to get stolen. So we're sitting at the camp, and about every 10 minutes, I'd get up with a flashlight, walk over there just to look at it again. I was amazed that I actually got a deer. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. If somebody would have told me then that I would have, shot, at 62, I would have had over 100 deer, I would have said no way, because back then you're thinking, will I ever even get one?
Right. Sure. Yeah.
But you learn as you go. And I look back at what I used to do to deer hunt and stuff and realize how bad I was at it. I didn't know anything, but you learn as you go.
Yeah. It's a work in progress, right?
Yeah. And it's not all about the deer, or I wouldn't have still been out there. It's about loving what you're doing. It's, just being out there. You're sometimes you lose, sometimes the deer win.
Yeah, that's true. It's part of hunting, all right.
It's not all about just killing them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I appreciate this. I had a great time talking with you. I liked hearing your stories and things like that. So again, thank you for doing this with me. And this was a great conversation.
Great. Well, thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. Thanks again. I really appreciate it.
I'll talk to you sometime soon.
All right. Thanks.